Scott and Craig are here from waitingfornextyear.com. Joe emails, great show, WFNY rocks. Love when you have these guys on. I read their stuff daily. Very cerebral, and they cover a myriad of topics on a regular basis. Although I can't believe that Craig is really a Brenda fan.
Yeah, Greg Brenda. You know, he takes a lot of flack on Twitter. A lot of people can't stand how negative he is, but his shtick on the radio, I've always been a fan.
Well, you got him back in drive time now.
Yeah.
So you don't have to wait up real late to listen. Carl and Willoughby, since the Browns came back, it seems like we never have any talent and very little depth. How is it that Baltimore, Pittsburgh, New England, and the other teams in the playoffs year after year have the talent, have the depth, and they draft near the bottom every year? When will this happen in Cleveland? Before answering when will it happen in Cleveland, because nobody knows, why is that? How is it just superior scouting? What do you think it is?
It's definitely the drafting, and they've been doing it for so long that, you know, it just seems to happen over and over again for them.
And they don't seem to get lucky. They seem to know what they're not surprised when they pick guys.
But yeah, so the Browns just have to do it over the course of the next decade, and then, you know, they'll be the next AFC
Although,
North.
Can we all agree that drafting Tom Brady was luck?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
yeah,
they're not geniuses for picking him in the 6th round. If they were geniuses, they would have picked him in the 1st round.
Right.
So 216-575-0403. We'll go to Liberty, Ohio. Wayne standing by. Hello, Wayne.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Just a thought on evaluating the Browns and Colt McCoy. I don't think that people realize how bad this team was and still is as far as personnel. I have no idea how anyone could evaluate Colt McCoy at all. The only thing that I liked from him was that he's a good leader, he's heady, he brought the team back from being down. But let's face some facts here. Sanchez is doing well for New York, but when he went to New York, he had an offensive line and receivers that you actually knew their names, even living in Northeast Ohio. The Browns have, in essence, 2 offensive linemen, maybe a cornerback, receivers. Or if you ask someone in Baltimore who they were, they couldn't tell you who they were.
Okay. You're doing well up until that. It doesn't matter if the fans recognize the names or not. In fact, it's more important that the front office and the personnel evaluators, that they know them. So so far you're 90% right.
And I don't see how anyone could fairly evaluate that young man with the lack of talent that he has around him.
Just to finish up on that other point, everybody knew Braylon Edwards' name, so that's what you.
Yeah, well,
all right,
of course, if you beat people up outside of a bar and make the news, you're going to get your name well known.
All right, Wayne. All right, let's. I'm not sure why Colt McCoy's taking so much heat. Maybe you guys can help me out.
Well, let's first go back to Mark Sanchez, okay? He who had negative fantasy points for me this week. So I just want to put that one out there first. But Scott's the fantasy expert.
But he's gotten far the last 2 years.
He has gotten far, but we're talking about a first-round guy that the Browns traded out from. I mean, yes, he's been surrounded by superior talent, but I don't think the Jets know that much more about him as the Browns do about Colt McCoy.
That's a good point. In other words, if you switch them up, if you could, that the guys would probably perform the way the team is performing. In other words, McCoy might be doing what Sanchez is doing and vice versa.
And Colt McCoy might actually make fewer big mistakes.
Yeah.
That's exactly my point. I mean, if you were, say, for instance, and this is probably a poor analogy, but if you live in Georgia and you wanted to move to a retirement home in Arizona and you wanted to take a part of Georgia with you and it was 30-foot pine tree, and you plant it out in the desert in Arizona, what do you think is going to happen to the pine tree? So, I mean, the kid played great college football. He did not play against weak talent. He played against Nebraska and Oklahoma. He played ball games. The kid's a winner. I'm not standing up for him. I have no idea if he's going to be good or not. But I'm certainly not going to be able to tell when it's almost as bad as the snaps that Tim Couch got. As soon as the ball was snapped, it looked like a jailbreak.
Well, all right, you're making a great point. You're recovering from your previous mistake. You're doing very well. But here's the overall question, that Mike Holmgren and, by extension now, Pat Shurmur have put their eggs in the Colt McCoy basket. if they're, and what we've been told from day one is that Mike Holmgren is the quarterback guru. If they're wrong, imagine how wrong they are on defensive linemen and linebackers and everything else, because if they don't get the quarterback right, they don't get anything right.
Well, I think they've done fairly well on a defensive line. I mean, Jabal Sheard and Phil Taylor appear to be much better than what we had
Looks
in
like
their
it.
place before.
Looks like it. All right, Wayne, thank you.
Thank you.
Let me throw this out as a general question. If you're Mike Holmgren, Tom Heckert, and company, and you have a lot of this is retrospect now and hindsight being 2020, would you be better off saying, okay, we're going to pay attention to this side of the ball or this side of the ball? We're not going to be real good. We don't have much depth, so we may as well load up on offense or defense, which they didn't do. They could kind of split. I'm talking about since Mangini and going into Heckert, Holmgren. Would it have been smarter to say, all right, we're going to overlook this one side and maybe be better on one side?
I'd argue back that they did that. I mean, Joe Hayden, T.J. Ward, first 2 picks 2 years ago. Taylor, Sheard, first 2 picks this year. Key free agent pickup last year, Scott Fujita.
And this is with the offensive-minded
Sheldon
guys.
Brown, Chris Gokong.
Good point, but you're talking about offensive-minded, Holmgren,
who'd they pick
Shermer.
up? Who'd they, I mean,
Offensively?
Yeah, they traded for Peyton Hillis, but did you know that what you were getting when you traded for Peyton Hillis?
No, if you did, you wouldn't have gotten him.
So I would argue that they are focusing more on defense, hoping that their mind on offense can make lesser talent perform to a better extent, and load up the talent on the defensive side. Let that work for you. So whether it's working or not, I don't know. The thing with McCoy, to the caller's point, he's still young. It's tough to judge him based on the games he's played. But you have to judge him now solely based on some of the decisions he's making. Like that throw that led to the pick 6 was a terrible decision. Throwing across his body into the middle of the field to a running back. I know that was his read. I know he and Peyton weren't on the same page. That's the kind of stuff that Mike and Tom and Coach Shermer have to straighten out, is just to make better decisions. He's always going to be a guy, he's not going to grow overnight. So he's not going to be a guy who's going to be able to take 40, 50 passes from the pocket. He's going to have to run, he's going to have to roll, he's going to have to make those type of reads.
He's going to also have to roll to the left occasionally just to show that he can.
Correct. And even think the one ball that he's really lucky that not a lot of people are talking about was on the first drive when the Browns actually did well. He aimed for Muhammad Massaquan, who was way behind him, and the DB just didn't pick it off, and the ball went out of bounds. And that could have totally changed the scope of the game because that led to 3 points.
You know what bothered me that there hasn't been much talk about? On that pick 6, Alex Smith has to knock the guy out of bounds. I don't know what, it almost looked like he's making an open field tackle when the guy's a half a yard off the sideline. He's got to push him out. I'm not saying it would have changed well, it might have changed the game. They're at midfield. Who knows what happens at that point?
We need to design that drill for he and Usama Young. They can both practice knocking the guy out of bounds.
You don't have to make a tackle when you're a half yard.
Because a tight end going for 80 is not feeling very good either.
Exactly. 216.